Welcome to the Fight Against Free Kill Laws with Ed Salazar, where we give a voice to those who have suffered firsthand from medical malpractice. In Florida, families devastated by medical negligence are left without justice because of a law many don't even know exists. Florida's free kill law prevents families from holding doctors accountable. These are real stories with real loss and no justice. Contact Ed at 561-239-2417 or visit afreekill.com. Today we uncover the truth, share real stories, and demand change.
Good evening, friends, and thank you again for taking the time to tune in and listen to our podcast. First of all, update on the repeal of the free kill laws. Nothing much has changed since our last podcast. The bill is still sitting on Governor DeSantis's desk, waiting for his signature. But we feel very confident that with the overwhelming majority of votes in both the House and the Senate, that we don't see how it can possibly be vetoed. But there is an active effort by lobbyists representing the Florida Medical Association and some other interests that adamantly oppose and are asking the government to veto it. So if you have feelings about this and your heart compels you, write to Governor DeSantis and tell him how you feel about this terribly unjust law. For tonight, we are blessed that Miss Lori Henry is going to return and talk to us again. We're going to pick up where we left off on her first visit with us about this horrible, dark evil called child sex trafficking. And before we bring Lori in, I'd like to show you this trailer, please.
How'd that make you feel? Giving a child his freedom.
Felt good.
You have been at this for 12 years.
My country 'tis of thee.
Why are you doing it?
Sweet land of liberty.
Because God's children are not for sale. It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen.
For Homeland Security, we can't go off rescuing Honduran kids in Colombia.
This job tears you to pieces.
And where my fathers died.
And this is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
Land of the pilgrims
And yet somehow you have failed to bring me one real-world lead. It's over, Tim. Close up and come back home.
So you quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
South of that river is all rebel territory. No one goes in.
What if this was your daughter?
So, she's gone.
Hear that? That's the sound of freedom.
Again, the first time I saw this movie, it was so disturbing that you couldn't get a lot of those images out of your mind. You couldn't get a lot of those thoughts out of your mind. And when I met Robert and Lori, and through a business, mutual interests in business, She told me about her involvement, that she had been affiliated with or had been exposed to the International Justice Mission. And I went ahead and I did a little research on that. And the International Justice Mission, it works to combat sex trafficking and sexual exploitation, cyber sex trafficking, forced labor, slavery, property grabbing, and police abuse of power. And these are all things that you think of, that you associate with, third world countries or someplace else. But in talking, with Lori, I learned that it's a very, very real problem. It's a very, very real problem right here in South Florida. So, Lori?
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a worldwide problem. I think it's a human problem. It's a huge industry. So it's kind of multifaceted, right? Because you have this underground, seemingly underground business that's probably brings in more wealth than any other business. And it's such a dark, disgusting business that it's hidden, but it's very powerful. So the power lies in the traffickers' hands, the people that work with them. So since there's so much wealth with this industry, it's multi-level. So a lot of payoffs are happening to keep this dark and to keep this secret. You hear about these kind of things in the drug trafficking and things like that, but human trafficking is a whole nother level.
Where do the victims come from, the victims of human trafficking?
So victims, again, it's a worldwide problem. So in my travels, I have known and worked with people who helped children as young as girls 4 and 5 years old, which is pretty unimaginable. In sexual trafficking, human trafficking is, cigarette making, brick making. There's a lot of places that children are involved with trafficking. But sexual trafficking is a whole nother level of evil, because you are taking a human life that feels and has emotions and has identity, and you're stealing that identity from them, and you're treating them as a commodity, less than human. So traffickers are people that have zero care about a human being, a human life. Like you would, and I and anybody else means nothing to them. It's all about the power and the authority and the dollar, right? So when a child, and the average is probably 14 to 20, but when a child is either stolen or sold by their family into human trafficking, then they are put in a position of a commodity. And
excuse me, are they brought into the country though? Is it safe to say that frequently they're illegal aliens?
so this is normally the system, right? So I'll just take one of my trips. So when I was in Thailand, there was one of the stories. There was a girl who was brought in the country from Burma. So that's a neighboring country, different language. So her family thought that she was going to be able, she was like 12 years old, going to be able to go to work and send money back for the family. A lot of places that it's not a kidnapping would be something to that nature. You know, they think that they're going to make money to bring back to the family, right? Because the families are in poverty. So they find out about this. The uncle sells her to these people. They take her from her little village in the mountains down. I'm just going to take a quick journey, but it's got a lot of pit stops in it. But they take her in a bus, then on a boat, then on another vehicle, and they cross border with her, and they bring her to a place where she has no identity, she doesn't know the language, and she has no way out of her situation. Zero. There is zero hope for her. And this isn't a isolated case. This is how traffickers work. So whether it's taking a child from the United States and bringing them to another country, or taking a child from, you know, what we consider a country that would be involved in this, right? Men travel to a lot of those countries for this reason. You know, we kind of hear about them and know about them, so we somehow have accepted that there. But it's happening, like you said, all over the place. And I'm trying not to get too crazy, because just the thought of the process is so sickening. But this little gal that I started talking about ended up in Thailand in a brothel. IJM, on one of my trips with meeting with them, was involved in the rescue of the brothel, the girls in the brothel that she was in. And this little gal when I met her, she was this cute little baby girl, 12 years old, with this big smile on her face. Like, we got to take her out and kind of bless her a little bit. But her story was that she was sold by her family, taken to a place where she had no identity, forced to service an enormous amount of men every day, and they just broke her little body. And that is hard, you know, for someone to swallow, but that's the truth of this disgusting trade that we're talking about. And they're not treated humanely. When they're brought there, they're resistant, right? Your little girl, my little girl, would be totally resistant to what's going on. But they beat them, they starve them, they threaten them, they tell them that they'll kill their families if they don't do what they're told to do. They drug them. They do everything they can to take away their identity, so that they feel like their job is to be merchandise. And that's hard for us to accept. Like, how could someone go that far? But when you are being treated less than a human for that long, and you're either going to do what your powers that be are telling you to do, or die. And that's the way it is. And I'll read you this little excerpt from this girl's experience. This is from this girl that I'm talking about. This is her experience.
Okay.
So she had been rescued, and it says, a few days after our meeting, an escape from the brothel brought to authorities. And then it says, you may remember I mentioned earlier, and he mentions this girl. She told us about the two girls who escaped from the brothel only to be tracked down by police, returned to the brothel keeper. He made an example of them by beating them, binding them with a rope, and shooting them for all to see as a deterrent for any who might think that they could try to escape in the future. So this is a brutal business of human slavery. And it's amazing to me. I've been in this. I've had a passion for this and have been involved in this for over 30 years. Oh. And I haven't seen a breaking of the ice on this at all for everything I've seen. It is so protected. So in here you see that the authorities brought them back and shot them. So I'm not just making stuff up to try to make this dramatic. This is a real business that people are involved with that involve humans that are being terrorized every day. And it doesn't just happen in these faraway places, it happens right here at home.
Well, here in beautiful, affluent, comfortable South Florida, we were talking about how, the media, they will expose crimes like looting, murder, those things they'll talk about all day. But you don't hear any stories about this dark evil.
No, it's
But they've got to know that it's here.
crazy to me. They do know that it's here. So in Palm Beach County, there's a number of groups who are trying to work to bring awareness and bring some kind of help to anybody that's being trafficked. And the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office is involved with helping as much as they can. They have groups that are set aside just for that piece of being human trafficked. And so
this is how you know for sure that
yeah,
there are victims here. And
oh yeah, and I think the problem, or I like to look at solutions to a problem. This business, if you want to call it that, is not going away. This is a Goliath. This is enormous. And they don't want to, the people that are really involved with this, probably part of the reason it's so quiet is because if you're too loud about this, you won't be here for very long, because this is a very powerful, has very powerful players in it. And we've seen that on the media a little bit. You see somebody exposed for this, and all of a sudden they hang themselves in jail.
they're 6
feet
feet
where I'm
tall
going.
and they hang
Yeah.
themselves in them. Yeah.
So there's a reason that this is being silenced and is protecting names and numbers and all that stuff. But in this area, I think as humans, as people, I think the people that I talk to, they want to help somebody who's been so. I mean, if you see a beaten dog on the side of the road, you stop your car.
Your heart bleeds.
We stopped the other day. We were driving down the road, and there was this little tiny kitten crossing the road. We stopped in traffic and grabbed this little kitten out of the road and found help for it. Took the time to find help for it, right?
Of course.
If you really believed that this was happening to humans, to baby humans, our little kids that have been stolen, you hear about, a van, that's old school, a van driving by, but it's true to this day. There was just a story months ago about somebody here locally who slowed his van down and tried to get this kid anyway in the van and was deterred by somebody who saw it happening. This is still happening all the time. And
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we came on, before the show started, you were saying that you and the people that are like you are contacted occasionally by Palm Beach Sheriff's Department. Mm-hmm. Why do they contact you?
So if there's a gal that they've gotten that has agreed to get help, and that's hard because a lot of
someone who has been in a trafficked in a brothel.
Well, it doesn't have to be in a brothel. It can be by a pimp, or can be by, there's a lot of different entities that are involved in this business, right?
Private homes?
Yep. It can be a lot of different places that are involved in the business of trafficking or abusing. And so, I forgot what I was going to say about that. I'll go back to the PBSO. With them and the groups that are involved, like Rescue Upstream, there's a group that's trying to come down from Connecticut and purchase or hopefully be donated a couple of houses so that we can help with the healing process. But we all talk and we all meet and know each other. and Catholic Charities. There's other organizations in Palm Beach County that help. So I might get a call from one of them, can you help with this gal? And I might go get a hotel for her for a certain amount of time until they can, get her to the next steps of healing and help. And usually it's better to move them to a different location where they won't be picked back up by their controller.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And this happens how often?
yeah, it's an everyday business in every neighborhood. So this is never not happening. This is never not happening across the board.
If so, those of us that have children, those of us that have grandchildren, that we love more than life itself. If you try to imagine, just try to imagine what your heart would go through if you knew that you had lost one of these precious souls to these filthy people. And
I mean, we would go to the ends of the earth. I would go to the ends of the earth if someone took one of my loved ones like that, right? We would try to do whatever we can for that. So to me, what can we do as a community? What is there here that we can do? We can work with these organizations as we're all working together to start with something like having a couple homes where we can, what's happened to them isn't healed in 6 weeks or a couple weeks in a hotel. This takes years of healing and counseling and restoration, a couple years at minimum. And so it's an expensive help for one of these victims, right? But if we had some homes in this county, which I believe we should, I just think it's wrong that we don't have more than what we have right now. And then we can have a program where we're really restoring and helping them one life at a time. No matter how many through the years we can help many, but if we help one life at a time, then we've done a great thing. If that was my loved one or your loved one, we would be so in it and so thankful that somebody was there to receive them and help them through their pain and their suffering into a place where they can feel like a person again.
you hear a lot of talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. In your experience, the young women and the children that are liberated from this, how often is their transition? How often is their recovery successful?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question because they have been so abused and so broken that it takes a lot in that healing process. But it's possible, and there are great success stories of people that have come out of it and been healed and been helped. And the resilience of the human spirit, and I think God in that human spirit, and the finding that place where these girls find out, like I've been in aftercare programs talking to the gals, just knowing that they're free from that and that they're on a journey to help and healing. It was such a surprise to me to see the happiness and the joy on their face, that they were in a safe place and that they weren't going to be sold that night. They weren't going to be hurt anymore. They weren't. I believe that that the human spirit is resilient and God in a person is resilient. And this little gal, one of the things that was so outstanding to me about her, this little gal that I was talking about in the beginning, is they found on her wall, number 5 they called it, in the brothel, this etched in the wall. it said, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is a stronghold of my life. Whom shall I be afraid? When evil men advance against me to devour my flesh, when my enemies and foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident." That blows my mind.
Where does that kind of
That this little gal in that horrible position found her strength where she needed to find it, and after that recovered from that.
She carved this into the wall?
She carved that into the
with
wall.
her fingernail?
I don't know what she carved it with, but it was carved in the wall in her room.
And she was freed, and she smiles. Now she smiles.
This beaming, beautiful little girl smile that gives me hope that we can do this. We can help people. We can be a part of. We might not ever stop the big picture of this, but we need to be involved in rescuing and helping these victims.
That's just absolutely. That's beautiful. All right, so beautiful South Florida. What can the good people of South Florida do?
I did give my email address and
that should be
to
available.
put on the screen. I don't know if it's going to be up there or not.
It will
and then there's a address, a phone number for the hotline for human trafficking. But having watched this for so long, there's what I feel like we can be doing is housing and rehabbing people that have been sold to these horrible human beings that have done destruction to them. To do that, we need the finances and the funding to do that. It's not a new idea. It's all mapped out. It's all there. We just need a couple of homes to get started with. We have the program in place to help them, and people that are vetted, that know how to take care of post-traumatic stress situations like that, to care for them. And so even continuing to maintain a home like that is very expensive, and that's probably why we don't see it, right?
Right.
Because who's profiting? You can start a little business with them where they're making things. In other countries, we would help them get started with little businesses. Here, we can do things in the community. I want to start a little shop, a little boutique to bring awareness. And, little things like that we can have in place to help with the bigger picture.
All right, well, as we said before, viewers, talk about this. Talk with your neighbors. Talk with your family. Talk with your church. And talk about ways that we can get together, we can work together to help Lori and her compatriots do something meaningful. These girls, these people, these precious souls, they need something better to go to than where they're at. And I think that's job one right now.
I agree. Thank you so much for giving a voice to these little ones.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for joining us again, and appreciate your time and your concern, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you for watching The Fight Against Free Kill Laws with Ed Salazar, where we interview those who have dealt firsthand with medical malpractice. Families are devastated by medical malpractice and left with no justice. This isn't just a loophole. It's a failure to protect the ones we love. It's time to change the law. It's time for accountability. Contact your state legislatures, visit afreekill.com for more information on how to help, or contact Ed at 561-239-2417. Because every life should matter.